everybody, and welcome to our penultimate, penultimate, isn't it, workshop?
It is.
The one before the last one, yeah. And we've got the lovely Rachel Farrington with us today, and she is going to be talking about support for families and financial support available for there. But first of all, I've got a lovely introduction to do. So I hope this is right, Rachel. I hope this is right. Tell me if it's not. So Rachel Farrington. During her time at Click Sergeant, Rachel gained experience as both paediatric 0 to 18 and young people social worker 16 to 24, specialising in working with Click Sergeant's values and mission statements to minimise the impact of cancer diagnosis on children and families. Outside of the medical element, specialising in empowerment and holistic needs analysis and delivery. Join us as we discuss the impact of a cancer diagnosis has on families and the best strategies and support available to ease the tensions that cancer brings upon the household. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you very much. Do you know what? That was like listening to my mum introduce me that.
I did mumsy, didn't I?
Yeah, I don't often do sort of like, you know, full Sunday name introductions. You don't, do you? No, but no, as a cancer social worker, I worked out of Clatterbridge and Alderhay. And dealing with, as Sam said, children and young people who had a cancer diagnosis, and helping them to, from sort of like a needs-led assessment basis, to minimise the impact that the diagnosis has on the family. There's no denying it comes through the family like a train, and that there is no denying that. But actually, it's a train that you can jump on. It's a train that you can swing off. It's a train that you can stand on the roof, you can have a seat, you can have all these different elements of the train, I think, as you can have. So it doesn't necessarily have to be that there is a train heading directly towards you. So some of the things that I sort of like worked with and recommended and talked through with the patients and families that I worked with was the first thing that happens when you get a cancer diagnosis is you hit something called anticipatory mourning. So anticipatory mourning isn't always as gloomy as that sounds, because it does sound quite gloomy, although we do, you know, we do look at things from a perspective of, you know, gosh, this is a cancer diagnosis. There are, you know, what stage am I at? You know, what's going to happen? Is there, you know, is there going to be a negative outcome, a positive outcome? And from a point of view of women with breast cancer, the anticipatory mourning also goes through the elements of how you view yourself as a woman. So one of the things that research tells us is that this anticipatory mourning, so be it for life, love, laundry, that the research tells us that it's a linear process. Now, I completely disagree with research on that one, and I liken it to, so if you got a ping pong ball and you put it in a giant jar, okay, and then write all the way around the outside the emotions that you might possibly feel and how these emotions might possibly impact on you, because sort of like, you know, in the model of a traditional grief, it's denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, and that's sort of like Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who is the absolute expert on this. So if you get all of those and you put them outside a jar, and I actually used to make jars with people, so do make yourself a lovely jar, because it does make you feel better. So when you pop your ping pong ball in your jar with your emotions written all about, add all the other ones as well, because whilst those are the linear process that's sort of like proven in research, there's a million different emotions. Sam, come back to me, unmute yourself. So you've got, so you go through this grief, anger, denial, bargaining, depression, acceptance. Give me the emotions around that. So what would you say the emotions are around denial? It ain't just a river into Egypt, you know.
Denial that you're going to get better, you're going to be able to make it through. Denial that your husband's going to stick around with you and go through this with you. Denial.
So that's fear.
Yeah.
So the emotion there is fear. So what else could be around about fear then? Let's think about that one. So we've got fear as an emotion.
Losing
what
your
else?
Hair.
Losing your hair, absolutely.
Losing your hair and eyebrows. Losing your job.
Links to poor self-esteem and the impact that it has on your self-esteem. So if we go to the section of the grief model that deals with anger, what other emotions can you think about that are to do with anger?
Why me?
Thank you. Yeah.
Basically, I keep fit and everything like that. Why me when there's horrible people in this world? Why is it me who gets it? Let's see, other anger. That's the main one, really, isn't it?
Well, anger can also be from not so much from a just from a why me perspective, but it can be anger against sort of like, it can be anger against yourself.
Yeah, if you've not looked after yourself all your life, you can get angry at yourself for being frustrated
and that's
as well, can't you?
Very misplaced anger.
Yeah.
So, but it's because it's part of the emotional journey and the emotional process. Bargaining.
Yeah.
What do we do that's bargaining?
If you just let me go through it and make it, I promise I'll make a difference and I'll change the way I live my life. And
I promise I'll only ever drink green juice, and I'll never have alcohol again. And I promise that I'll be nice to everybody in the world. And I promise that I'll look after my kids. And I promise that I'll do this and I'll do that. And I'll be a better wife or a better sister or a better mother. So you have all of those. So I used to stick all of these around this jar. Depression.
Yeah, I know. I want my life back. I want my life back. The person I was. Why can't I do this anymore? And I can't do that.
Absolutely. And that links to also FOMO.
Yeah.
Because you're going to have treatment. You're going to have, times when you're going to watch all your mates go out on a night out and you're not going to be feeling up to going on it. So you have a lot of FOMO about that.
Yeah.
Then we've got acceptance. Now, acceptance, I think, is a very funny word, because who accepts that they have cancer? So for me, acceptance is quite a tricky one to deal with. But you can kind of, you can have days where you get up and you go, do you know what? I accept that my life is as it is, and today I'm just going to crack on and do this. Or you can go, oh, here's my duvet, night world. Yeah. Away you go. So I used to make one of these jars with a ping pong ball in the bottom, and I used to sort of, like, the people I work with, I would say, right, okay, so today you're feeling calm, where's your ping pong ball? And the ping pong ball's right on the bottom, and it's right, it's steady, and it's, you're not in denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. What you're doing is just kind of cracking on with the day. But actually, some days you can wake up, and I say some days you can wake up, this can actually change from minute to minute, hour to hour, dependent on what you're dealing with in the specific moment. So sometimes your ping pong ball is like your jar's being shook. So it's bouncing around and it's kind of hitting off each wall, and you're kind of going, I promise I'll only ever eat green juice. Oh, but my mates are all going out tonight. I really feel gutted there. So it's not so much a linear process. You don't go through denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. I find and have found in that working with the patients I've worked with is that your emotions bounce around all over the place.
I agree, and I think that happens throughout the process of the diagnosis, but as well after the diagnosis and treatment's finished, it still continues then as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that impacts on yourself as the person who's had the cancer diagnosis. It impacts on partners, it impacts on children, and there's a beautiful piece of research about functional ego states. I won't go too much into research. I'm such a research geek. I won't go too much into research because it does get a little bit intense and too heavy. But you, as a person who has a cancer diagnosis, you go through some functional ego states. So we all have different ego states that we exist in day-to-day life. So you have sort of like the parent, the adult, and the child. So your functioning ego state as a parent, you can either be a critical parent, which is like moralistic, judgmental, authoritarian, or nurturing parent, reassuring, caring, encouraging, supportive, understanding. And you can have these states when you're dealing with your person who's struggling with your diagnosis. So sometimes you can be like, so if you were to say something like, it's not you that's going through this, why are you feeling bad? That's kind of a critical parent stance. Or reassuring, caring, sometimes you take the position of everything's going to be fine, it's going to be all right, and you push your feelings and emotions and your worries and your thoughts to one side. So if we go to the other end,
I'm fine.
Absolutely.
You don't want to tell them,
and we all know what fine means, don't we?
Yeah.
It starts with something I won't say, but it ends in insecure, neurotic, and emotional.
Oh my goodness.
I didn't say it, Sam. I didn't say it. So then at the other end of these continuums, you have the rebellious child or the adapted child, and you have the free child. So when I say the words free child, what do you think of?
Free child, did you say?
Free child.
I think of a child that's happy and doesn't care and carefree. But
do you know what I think of when someone says free child to me?
Go on.
Did you ever run when you were a kid?
Yeah.
Like run when there's no, there's no restraint, there's no you're not running anywhere, you're not trying to get anywhere, you're just running and your arms are flailing and you're just enjoying being in the moment. So curious, energetic, fun-loving, spontaneous. And then you get sort of like on the other end of that continuum of the ego state of the child, you get sort of like defiant, complaining, or your adapted child, which can be compliant and passive. And as somebody who has a cancer diagnosis, you can flip between all of these ego states. So you've got critical parent, nurturing parent, rebellious child, adaptive child, and free child, as does everyone around you. And what we want to try and do is we want to try and bring it into the present, into the adult, because as a functional ego state, we want to be adults, don't we? There's a time to be a free child, and there's a time to be an adapted child, and there's a time to be a rebellious child. But we want to be in the adult state. So what we want to get to is a more reality-based scenario. So when we're going through this anticipatory morning, for whatever reason, whether it is about appearance or whether it is about diagnosis or whether it's about treatment, what we want to do is try and have a route into the now. There's a place for all of the functional ego states, but we want to try and get that route into the now. And whether that route into the now is for you as the person who has the cancer diagnosis, or whether it's that you're trying to support your family, your partner, your children, to become rooted into the now, then there are certain coping techniques and strategies that you can use. And I find that, or I found that a lot of, particularly the women that I work with, the young women, use journaling for that. Because journaling for me is something that is, it's rooted in the now, isn't it? It's where you can take those functional ego states and you can put them somewhere to express them, to not have the impact on the people around you, to hold them and to divert that to create the questions that you need answering. And we used to use a lot of that, and I think for your diamonds, hello diamonds, I think for your diamonds it is a really good starting point about the support, because what it does is it enables you to identify what part of Sam's diamonds that you need to utilise. So yes, anyway, that's the research bit.
Be able to identify which of those ego things are kicking in the most at any one time, and maybe you'd notice it if you were journaling, wouldn't you? You'd be able to say,
absolutely,
well, actually, I need to sort that out, because that's me just being a child. I need to grow up, pull my big girl knickers up, and blah blah blah. Do you know what I mean? And have a word with yourself, because when you write it, I think it goes in more and you accept it more, because you write it, you see it, and you can't get away from it. Do you know what I mean? It's there, whereas a thought can just go boom. But when you're writing it down, you're taking the time to write it down, you can actually sort of hear yourself and the way you're being when you write it down. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, absolutely. So we started this conversation with me saying there's a train coming through your life. So if we're in critical parent mode, the train is being driven by us, because we're moralistic, we're judgmental, we're authoritarian. If we're in nurturing parent mode, we're feeding the train with coal.
Yeah.
If we're in free child, we're surfing the train on the top. If we're in rebellious child, we're hanging on and our legs are dangling like this in the past. If we're in adapted child, compliant and passive, we're kind of doing as we're told, just, you know, not really noticing anything that's going by. And what we want to do is we want to aim for the adult state, which is where you sat on the train. And I just find it's quite easy to explain
when you said people, that like that.
Yeah, it makes it much easier to think about yourself when you're journaling. Thinking about the train that's come through your life is to think about whereabouts on that train you are, and how you're focused on getting yourself to be the person who is sat on the train calmly and approaching things in a rational way. Because let's face it, I don't think there is anything in the world that can throw you through more of a loop than the word cancer. It's a powerful word, it's an emotional word, it's a sensitive word, it's a terrifying word, it's a word that makes you hear nothing else that comes after it. So to kind of have an awareness of your ego states and where you're at, you can think and look at the logical solutions as to how you can get to your adult state and how you can consider where you are on that given day. But I also like the fact that within these ego states, there is a point when you can sit in a delicious dark. There is a point where you can say, do you know what? No, actually, today, I don't want to be an adult. I don't want to be the person who's strong for everybody. I don't want to be the person that's surfing on top of the train. I just want to pull the duvet over my head and have a me day and think about me and not worry about anybody else. And one of the things that I always say for my patients that I work with when they're journaling is, every day there are a few things that have to go in your journal if you can. Give yourself permission to do something. So give yourself permission to do something that is purely for you, purely focused on what you need. So whether that is, do you know what, today I've been drinking green juice for 3 weeks because I've been told that it does this. So today I'm going to have bacon butter.
Yeah.
So give yourself permission to do one thing. Because if you give yourself permission, if you write it down, it's a bit like your mum giving you a note to get out of gym class. If you write it down,
that never happened for me. Never
if
happened
you write
for me,
it down, if you write it down, it's okay. You've given yourself permission, so you can do it. You can enjoy that bacon butty and thoroughly enjoy it because you've given yourself permission to do it. And you also have to write one positive thing about yourself every day. So the positive thing about yourself, now sometimes if you're anything like me, sometimes that can be quite a challenge. I do this on a daily basis. I write something positive about myself because I think as women, we all have hang-ups. I would like to see myself through Sam's mirror, and I'm sure Sam would like to see herself through my mirror, because we're actually kinder to each other's mirrors than we are our own. So when you're journaling, think about one positive thing per day. Now, that positive thing could be, do you know what, my toenails look okay today. It could be, I did a good job of talking to the kids last night. I'm alleviating their fears. It could be, do you know what, I've just drawn my eyebrows on and they're on point.
Yeah.
So there are lots of things. So you always have to give yourself permission to do one thing, and you always have to write a positive thing, because on the days where you're in rebellious child or adapted child or critical parent and you're being so horrible to yourself because of the situation that you're in, you can flick back and go, do you know what, a week last Tuesday my toenails looked amazing. But
the other thing as well, you might be able to spot a pattern. You might be able to spot a pattern of when that rebellious child shows up, and then you can sort of address it a little bit more. I like
when I go into rebellious child mode. I love it. It's so
I think everybody needs to do it every now and again, just so they can put two fingers up to their cancer and be like, right, I'm doing what I want to do. And I think it makes you feel better as well, because you spend so much time trying to guard everybody else and make sure everyone else, just a woman thing to do as well. But when you feel like you are to blame for some reason for putting all this pressure on the family because you have cancer, then it's nice every now and again just to put the guard down of protecting everybody, making sure everybody's okay, and just go, you know what, me today. I think it needs to be done more often, to be honest.
So moving forward, so that's just kind of a little bit about just a little tip that you can do something daily. If you're not a writer, draw. If you're not a drawer, sing it. If you know, however you feel that you need to have that point of expression, take that time for yourself every single day. If you can. If you can't, it's okay. There's no pressure. You're not letting anybody down. It's not. So taking that time just for yourself is part of the thing that I found when I'm working with patients, enables them to get to the end of their treatment and look at the next phase with a slightly stronger perspective. Now, I hate that word strong, because what is strong?
Oh, you're so strong. No, I'm just surviving. I'm just doing what I've got to do. Yeah.
Well, what is strong and what is weak?
Yeah. Where's the line?
Because as a society, we think, like, if stuff comes out of your eyes, right, if you cry, we see that as a sign of weakness. I don't. No, I don't see it as a sign of weakness. I used to say to the kids that I work with, if you needed to fart, right, if you held it in, your stomach would twist and it would turn and it would hurt and you'd be like this. Well, crying is farting out of your eyes. If you hold that in and keep it bottled up, keep it driven down inside you, then your stomach is going to twist and turn and it's going to hurt. So let it blow. Oh yeah, Sarah's saying, oh, you're so brave. That's another one. Oh goodness me.
Hideous. Like I have a choice to be brave, do I?
Do you know what? We should actually make some Sam's Diamonds flashcards.
Oh, I know. Play bingo. Play bingo.
I have a friend who once did a few taxi driving shifts, and on the second one he had standard answers on the seat next to him. Have you been on long? Yep, I've been on since 7. Are you going on holiday this year? Yeah, I'm going to Tenerife. So maybe we should have some Sam's Diamonds. We'll call them the
I reckon we should do it as bingo, because you can have, oh, you've got a nice shaped head, that can be in there as well. But you got the best one. That was the other one. Like, there's so many.
Yeah. As cancers go, that's a good one to have.
Yeah, it's a good one to have, that.
Yeah. So maybe we should think about that, and maybe you don't look ill.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
Because all things like this are visible, aren't they?
Yeah. Or not just that, just because you're walking around with a smile, oh, you can't be ill. It's like, well,
yeah. The interesting thing I used to see, I used to have a response for is if a person that I was working with, particularly with the young people, if they parked in a disabled spot and they got out of the car, people would look at them as if to say, well, what are you doing there? Yeah. And yes, the answer is none of your goddamn business.
Yes, I don't need to explain myself to you.
So there are some beautiful things that you can do as a human being to be able to look after yourself, and journaling and writing helps you to identify those questions that you need to ask of the people, the people that give you the nerves when you go to the appointment and you sit down and you're watching their face and you're watching people coming in and out of the room. Those journaling moments can help you, and being aware of where you are in those journaling moments can help you to ask the professionals the questions that you actually need to ask.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why I think journaling's are really, really good.
And would you do journaling as a kind of support mechanism for children in a family? So, like, if I got diagnosed, would it be worth me trying to get my children involved in journaling? Have you got any tips for supporting the kids when it comes to diagnosis?
Absolutely. And I think this is really dependent on the level of needs, understanding. I once did an experiment with a group of scouts, right? So one of them said to me, "What's cancer?" I said, all right. I said, that's a really difficult question. I said, well, you two lads just come and stand here. So the 2 lads came and stood there. And I said, okay, so what I want you to do is stand really close so you're touching each other. So they stood shoulder to shoulder like this. And I said, okay, so now separate. I said, that's what happens to a cell. So cells separate. I said, and then those 2 cells separate. So I picked up 2 more kids, not literally picked them up, I did pick them up by their ear and everything. I said, so your 2 cells have now become 4. I said, so all of you lot are going to separate now. So we got 4 more people up. And I explained, and you can do this really, really well with biscuits. Who doesn't like a good biscuit? And then you get to eat them afterwards as well, obviously. So a normal cell, a normal, happy, healthy cell will do exactly that. It will sit and it will go, okay, so now I need to split in half. Oh, hello, identical twin. How are you? So that's a normal way of growth. But sometimes, and this is particularly good with biscuits, although not good for eating them afterwards, sometimes what happens in the cell is it starts to go, I'm not quite sure what I'm doing here. So, and that's a bit like crumbling the biscuit. So when you crumble the biscuit, you're not snapping it in half, you're crumbling it. All of these cells are going, do I split in half? What do I do? So it ends up being a pile of crumbs. And what happens is, the more those cells crumble themselves, the bigger the pile of crumbs becomes. So it's normal to break your biscuit in half, but it's not normal to crumb it, because how would you dunk it in your brew?
Yeah.
So So in terms of explaining it to the kids like that is a really good starting point, particularly with younger kids. And sort of like giving them that visual thing is always really important. So if you're talking sort of like 0 to 11, giving them a visual understanding that's really, really easy for them to actually physically get the head around.
I know there's a book out, isn't it, called Mummy's Lump, that explains the journey of mummy going and losing her hair and things like that. And then there's one for teenagers, which is done in kind of like a Space Invaders kind of thing. And the chemo is, you know, the heroes coming in to kill the enemy and all that stuff. But I'm just wondering if there was anything that the parents could do with their kids at home to help support it, so to speak.
So one of the really good ways, particularly with younger kids, is to build something. So as you're going through treatment, what you do is each time you have a new treatment, say you were going to build a monster. So you start to pull together the things, you sort of like make your bog standard monster, and every time you have a treatment, add another bit to the monster. So give him another head, give him a tail, give him another arm, give him another, you know, whatever. And I'm saying him, it could be a her, also able to use female monsters. So add another piece and create this wonderful, wonderful experiment, because when you finish treatment, you can kick its head in.
Like it. And that would be so satisfying for everybody.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If it's snowing, take a snowball for each treatment. Throw it at the world.
Like it.
If the other thing that you can do is things like post-it, so you can sit down with your kids and you can get them to think about how they feel. So they might draw sort of like a sad face, you know, a sad face, or they might draw a needle, or they might draw, you know, a tablet, or they might draw mummy's beautiful shaped head. I can't believe that one. I'm sorry, that's new to me.
Really? It's said so much.
So you can draw those things out and you can express them. And what it does, I think kids generally struggle with, they couldn't do this face to face. So me sitting here face to face with a kid and saying, so mummy's got cancer, how do you feel, is going to be pointless, absolutely pointless. But doing something where you are side by side, like drawing out emotions, like thinking about, providing faces and saying, when mummy goes to the hospital, what does your face look like? When mummy comes home from the hospital, what does your face look like? Who do you talk to when your face looks like that?
Yeah.
It's a really simple way of getting those emotional conversations out. And actually it enables you as the adult to be a bit of a free child as well. We like a free child. So it enables you to say, because you can do your faces and you can say, when mummy goes to the hospital, this is how I feel.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's great to do with those, you can put them up around the house, but I like to make confetti out of them.
Yeah.
So you can sit there, get a giant box, and you can rip them up into tiny little pieces, and then you can throw them in the air, and kids react better to being a free child than they do an adult, because they don't have the emotional capability of being an adult. And one thing that cancer does is it tries to push kids to be adults before their time.
Yeah.
So think about the things that you can do that express the emotions. Mentos in a bottle of Diet Coke. You know, that's a great analogy for emotions. Yeah. Okay, so here's mummy's treatment going into the bottle of Coke. Boom.
Yeah.
And it kind of gives them a really visual representation of what cancer is and how they can cope with it. And actually, if you can get them laughing about it, they're not going to hide their emotions from you.
I think, you know,
they're not.
I don't know whether I've told you this at all, but like the way I broke the news to my children really shocked me, their resilience. We can worry about them so much, but I think they're more resilient than we think they are. I mean, I had 3 children. One was like 1 year old at the time, so all he enjoyed doing was blowing raspberries on my baldy head and laughing, making trumpy noises. He thought it was hilarious. My eldest was 9, so I sat down with her and I said, right, 2 weeks it took me to do this. How do I take? Because she's very sensitive, very emotional. Took her upstairs to the bedroom, said to Andrew, right, I'm going to explain it to her now. And I said to her, have you ever heard of something called cancer? And she said, yes, Mummy, it's that thing that woman had on GOC1, because there was a GOC1 programme where the woman was really insensitive. And she must have watched it with me, and I didn't remember. She had the woman with 1 boob. And I was like, oh, right, okay. And I was like, yeah, that's cancer. I said, well, Mummy's got cancer. I said, I'll be honest with you, Mummy's got cancer, but I'm going to be okay. And she was like, okay. and I was like, yeah, I'm going to be okay. I said, it might mean that the medicine they give me is going to make me lose my hair. I might go a bit baldy. Well, I'm not being funny, but that child who's so sensitive and everything like that just burst out laughing. And it wasn't laughing to hide how upset she was. She genuinely thought that was hilarious. And she was laughing her head off, saying, I can't wait to tell my friends that you're baldy. I said, you won't see that I'm baldy, I'll be wearing a wig. Well, I can't wait to tell them that that's a wig. You know, and you was like, hang on a minute, I've been worrying about this for so long. And then I said to her, well, you'll have to come wig shopping with me. And she did. And she had blue wigs on, pink wigs on. What do you think of this, Mummy? And it was just a big game.
The excitement and the free child, expressing, giving that free child the opportunity to be a free child, because we don't want them to be adults. We don't need them to be adults. That
laughing that she did resulted in her actually wetting herself. She was laughing that hard. And I was like, you're supposed to be a sensitive child, and blah, blah, and we started laughing about it. Middle child, she just wanted to wear Mummy's boots and Mummy's wigs and walk around the house in them. Do you know what I mean? She just knew that Mummy's medicine made her lose her hair, and that's all she needed to know. So you sort of just drip feed what they need to know. And I said to my eldest, you know, if somebody says something in school, like, you know, like if they start saying, oh, your mum's going to die, all this stuff, I said, well, they're talking rubbish, aren't they? I said, because you know me, I'm not going anywhere, I'm not leaving you anywhere. Do you know what I mean? So it's just talking rubbish, just ignore that. And the school did a race for life that year for the first time, and my kids started the race. So only just like, brilliant. But that's what I'm trying to say is you can worry so much about whether the kids are going to be okay, but 9 times out of 10 they will be okay. But you just got to keep an eye on spotting signs that they're not. Do you know what I mean?
I think for me, the difference between telling a kid who's sort of like between, I would say 0 to maybe 10, 11, and telling a kid who's 11 to 25, and I use 25 because my daughter's nearly 25 and she's still my kid. The difference is a bit like, do you ever watch Friends?
Yeah, all the time.
So, you know, when Ross and Rachel first kiss and the girls are talking and she comes in and she goes, Ross kissed me, and they go, right, okay, chocolate, tissues, does it end well? Are we and then he put his fingers in my hair and he did all that. And that's kind of a teenager for me. They need a bit more information. And then you flick over to the lads and the lads go, and so I kissed her, and Joey says, tongue, and he goes, yeah cool. And they just eat their pizza. And that's kind of the difference between telling a teen and telling a child. Because the teen's going to need more information, is going to need their emotional understanding, coddling a little bit, generally. It's a bit sweeping that, but you know what I mean. They're going to need a little bit more information, and the kids are just going to need fact.
Definitely.
So yes. There are also things, I mean, there are resources that people can access wherever you are in the community. And I know you've got some amazing signposting partnerships that you work with, and they're always available to give people support, because actually we don't know how to do this sort of like automatically. It's a very, very difficult feeling as a parent to feel out of control.
Yeah.
We spend all of our life being in control. So for example, one of the things that you can do in your journal is give yourself permission to be out of control.
Oh my God. That gives me anxiety just thinking about that now.
Really? See, I love being out of control.
Yeah,
I love it. It's brilliant.
no, I love
brilliant.
Spontaneous. What's the word? I love spontaneous, but I can't. When it comes to my life and my family, control. I've got to be. Everyone's okay, right? Fine. Do you know one of those? But for me, I can be stupid. But when it comes to them, I need to make sure they're all okay. So yeah, that would be a hard one actually for me, if I'm honest.
So in terms of the actual direct resources that you can use with kids, there's loads of them out there. I have put together a little bit of information that I'll send over to you, so if any of your lovely diamonds do want to have any further information about the resources, then they can drop you a line and you can send it out. The other part for me that's the most significant about a cancer diagnosis, and I don't know if you've had the financial element of it today.
No, not
okay. So the other thing that I've put together some information for you for is because there is also research about cancer diagnosis having an impact on family resources. So and that can be felt through from, you know, parents, grandparents, kids, you know, it can be felt all the way through the family, again, sort of like a bit like a train. So what I've done is I've had a look at the benefits that you could potentially be entitled to, and I've put together a little bit of information. So, okay, you come out of the doctors, you've had your diagnosis, you know what it is, you go home, you've spoken to your family, you've done your bit with your kids, you've spoken to your partner, you've spoken to your mum, your dad, your sister, and you've gone to work, and you've spoken to work, and work have said, all right, well, you're out of your sick pay, so sorry, take care. What happens? So if that happens
more than you think, because we've had quite a few girls who've lost their job because they haven't been working there for a year to be entitled to anything.
Anybody that thinks that you can't lose your job as a result of a cancer diagnosis is delusional, because I've seen it happen so many times. The law is designed to protect you, but the law is an ass, and we know this.
Yeah, gotta agree.
So there are lots and lots of different pockets of cash that you can do. So you have things like benefits. So the main benefit for somebody who has a cancer diagnosis is dependent on your circumstances, is a personal independence payment. So I've put together some information. So if anybody's interested in it, rather than me going through everything, it's just easier that you can send it out to people. And I've put together a little bit of information about what you'll need to have when you make the application for it. The one piece of information that I really, really, really want to get across is have somebody that knows what they're doing help you with the form.
Yeah.
Because what I used to find is that I used to go and sit with people, and they'd to do the form, and I'd go, so in terms of food, do you have any problems eating after you've had treatment? And they go, no, I'm all right.
Yeah.
So I'd go, okay, so who does your tea? Oh, well, my husband does that, my mum does that, my dad does that. Okay, who cuts it up? Well, yeah, you know, I've got neuropathy from the treatment, so I can't do that myself, so yeah, Dave does that for me. Right, okay. If Dave didn't cook your tea, would you have anything? Well, probably not, or I might have a bit of cereal, or, you know. So are you capable of standing up for an hour to cook a meal? Well, no, because Dave does that. And that is an indication of how people fill forms in, because it's like you go into the doctors, you go into GP surgery, you sit down, and the GP goes, how are you? And you go, oh, I'm fine, thank you very much, how are you?
Yeah. No, I've seen that loads of times, because I sit down and do the Pitfalls with girls, and I've got the score sheet as well. So I sort of say to them, so, when you have a shower, can you wash your back okay? Yeah, just call him in to do it. So, but have you got like a brush or anything to get your back, or can you get your arm around and clean your back and stuff? No, I can't. I've got one of those brushes, or I'll get such and such in to do it for me. And it's like, that's something that is a big difference to whether, your score, because you get points on how little you can do, don't you? And, they don't think of it. They just go, yeah, I can wash myself properly. But actually, can you? Yeah, it's and they always play it down because they don't want to look like they're complaining or they're whinging or anything like that. But the other thing with PIP, which I found through experience, if you don't get it first time round, and I probably shouldn't say this because it's going on YouTube, if you don't get it first time round, appeal. Because the amount.
Can I add a layer to that?
Go on.
Appeal through your MP.
Really?
Oh yeah. Do you know when I used to work in Liverpool, when the local MPs used to see me come in, they'd go like this, oh God, she's here, what does she want? Because as a social worker, my job is to advocate for my patients. Yeah. So going through, your MP will generally have a clinic. All right, in COVID, it might be a virtual clinic like this, but your MP will generally have a COVID clinic, and they have like a bat phone, right? And this bat phone goes through to the DWP.
Right.
And I've used the MPs. They're paid to do a public service, so all you're asking them to do is their job. But
the other thing as well is when you do appeal, the amount of people who've gone to appeal and gone to court to appeal, and the DWP don't turn up, so it's automatically awarded.
And then you get VAT payments, so you will always be back paid to the date that you actually applied. I had somebody that waited for I think it was about 19 months to get a payment, and got the whole thing backdated, several £1,000s. Because if you think about what that is, the rates of PIP are, so you've got your daily living element of it, which are between £55.10 and £82.50 a week. Then you've got your mobility component, which is how far can you walk, how long can you stand for, and that goes between £21.80 and I think it's around about the same. I think it's about £82. Now, those can also be swapped for, if you get the mobility component, they can also enable you to get onto the Motability scheme. So if you're struggling to get for treatment, then there are ways and means that you can be supported to have a reliable car if you're awarded PIP. But anyway, so that's one of the badge
as well, can't you, that way?
Absolutely, and all of these things are dependent on you receiving that benefit. Now, there are other elements to that. So there are other benefits such as employment and support allowance. So you can apply for employment and support allowance if you're working, self-employed or unemployed. That's based on the amount of the level of your national insurance contributions for the last 2 to 3 years. And that's split into 2 sections. So your 2 sections are you're too unwell to work, or you are in a group of people who are going to be supported to get back to work. Now, generally, somebody with a cancer diagnosis is going to be in this support group, which actually then gives you access to, there are top-up payments to do with that, which are, there's the, you can go for an enhanced disability premium on top of that with a cancer diagnosis. Or actually, if your treatment is going to be longer term, then you can go for a severe disability premium on top of that. And that just supplements your income. And post-assessment, so it's a 13-week assessment process with the SA, but you get paid while you're on the assessment process. So once you submit that application, you're being paid for the 13 weeks. Right. But the post-assessment period, that payment goes, I think it's for somebody over the age of 25, it's like 75 quid-ish a week. But post assessment, if you go into the group that is the support group, the amount of money that you can bring in is, I think it's just £113.55. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's kind of the level we're at. But you can also claim universal credit at the same time as that. Right. So universal credit is another element of finance that you can actually claim whilst you have a diagnosis. Now, that can be a little bit of a postcode lottery, because they're still rolling it out across the country, and different postcodes. You could live next door to somebody and they're in a different postcode to you. So my advice to anybody who's worried about finances, there are benefits out there that you potentially can claim. PIP isn't means tested at the moment. Whereas things like ESA, you have to have less savings than 16 grand in the bank. And that's a combined saving if you're in a relationship. So the other elements that obviously you can claim, you've got statutory sick pay, which can be directly through your employer. You've got prescription payment certificates, which your GP can sort out for you. Housing benefit is available to those on a low income. Council tax benefit, you can get a carer's allowance to top up your partner's income if your partner is having to take time off and they're self-employed, etc. And there are also miscellaneous benefits that are awarded automatically if you go under universal credit. So things like eye tests, travel expenses to and from hospital, free dental treatment, the cost of wigs, and fabrics and stuff for clothing. So if you wanted to get extra towels because your tummy's been upset because you're on chemo, or if you need to change your clothes more often because you've had a radiotherapy and you've got some burn, you can apply for funding for all of those things to help make your life easier. Then there's also the social fund that you can apply to, and I've written all this down for you, Sam, because it's a lot of information.
Thank God.
It's a lot of information. No, you don't have to remember any of it. I'll send it to you, and then whoever wants to get access to it can have access to it. So there are the social fund will help with things like if you are pregnant and have cancer, and you have a baby early because you need to have treatment, where does your maternity benefit come in there? So so the social fund will also help with things like that, and they will provide a cold weather payment. So if the temperature drops below 0, not many people know about this, if the temperature drops below 0 for a week, you can apply to the social fund for a small grant to top up your heating. Then we've got, I
was going to say, is there anything there, because I mean a lot of these payments and funding and stuff like that, they do take time to come through, and it's great that it gets backdated, but when you need that money now, is there anything instant that they can apply for? I know they've got a Macmillan loan they can go for, which is like £500, isn't it, emergency thing, but it's a one-off thing. Is there anything else?
The grants that are available, there's loads of them. So, and it's just a case of having a think. It's a bit like, you know, when you go to fill the form in and you want to put all of the side effects down. So what you have to do is think of your life as a medication. So have you ever been in the armed forces? Was your dad in the armed forces? Has your dad ever been a baker? Did anybody in the school, was anybody in your family a teacher? Because each of these particular professions generally have a benevolent fund.
I was a teacher when I had mine. I didn't know any of this.
So the benevolent funds, what the benevolence funds do, thanks very much, Sarah. That's really nice to hear that it's been helpful. So the benevolent funds, there's a brilliant book, Sam, and I've actually written it down for you. It's called The Guide to Major Trusts.
Oh yes,
it's issued every year, and basically, so you know, if you had somebody that was a Scottish piper in your family, the Scottish Piper Association will give funding from a one-off benevolent fund. So, for example, and I only know this because looking at it today. So, if you have somebody in your family who's an architect, get them to apply to the Lionheart Fund.
Oh my God!
Because it's a benevolent fund that's there to support people who have ever been an architect and their family. So there are things out there. If you've ever been in the armed forces, there's quite a few armed forces ones. Teaching, every profession, I guarantee you, every profession will have something that has set up a benevolent fund. So if you've ever been in the emergency services, if you've ever been a shop worker, if you've ever been a material cutter, if you've ever been, you know, all of these things. And there is one website called Turn to Us.
I've seen that.
Now, if you go to that website and you type in some minimal details about yourself, about your life, it will tell you what you can apply for.
Right, okay.
Now, some of them will...
And it's a number 2 us, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So sorry, somebody just tried to phone me. How rude. So there are lots of places that can give you a quick fix, and there are lots of ways to get access to that. So, you know, Macmillan is great in terms of being able to give you some advice. They can also do things like help you to reduce your monthly outgoings. So there's a grant that you can get from a company called the Charis Association. So, for example, if you'd got yourself into a pickle with a debt on your water, then they will give you an amount of up to, I think it's about 140 quid to help clear that debt. Because actually, when you've got a cancer diagnosis, the last thing you want to be doing is worrying about the day-to-day mundane, how am I going to pay my water bill?
Yeah.
And there are lots of places that enable you to do that. And sometimes it's just about asking the question, who can help?
Yeah. No, I appreciate all that. That is absolutely amazing, the amount of information you've given us, and you've got it written down, so you'll send it to me. So if anybody who's listening would like some information on that, then please
thanks, Lindsay.
And we can send it out to you. I know you've got another call that you're on at 8 o'clock, which is probably what that call was.
Yeah, you're more important, don't worry.
Thank you. Good answer. Good answer. Thank you enough for coming on. Absolutely amazing.
Absolute pleasure. Do you know what? If anybody has any questions, please feel free to email me, Sam, if you can collate any questions, because I was hoping to have had a moment to be able to say any questions, but I'm very conscious that you want to wind down and go to sleep.
Yeah, the 8 o'clock sleep time. My eyes are going.
But if anybody does have any questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch through Sam. You know, if there is something that I can give some information on or just shed a bit of light on, then that's exactly why we do these run these days. And I have to say, well done, mate. This has been really good fun.
It is.